The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden light across the neighborhood. It was the kind of evening that felt like a promise, a moment in time that invited dreams and possibilities. A small boy, no older than 10, sat on the front steps of his modest home, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. His sister, a little older and with a bright, contagious smile, was busy inside the house, probably helping their mother with dinner. But the boy wasn't thinking about food or chores. His thoughts were far away, focused on a dream that had lived in his heart for as long as he could remember. He dreamt of riding a bike. Not just any bike, but one that would carry him and his sister together through the neighborhood, past the rows of houses and the old oak tree at the end of the block, all the way to the open fields where the sun set in a blaze of colors. He imagined the wind rushing past him as he pedaled, his sister laughing behind him, both of them free and happy, their worries forgotten for just a little while. But there was one problem. They didn't have a bike. It wasn't that they didn't want one. It wasn't that they didn't deserve one. It was simply because their family couldn't afford it. His father worked long hours at a factory, and his mother did her best to make every dollar stretch. They had enough to get by, but there was no room for extras, no room for dreams like bikes and sunsets. The boy knew that. Still, that didn't stop him from dreaming. Every day as he sat there on the steps, he would watch the other kids in the neighborhood as they rode by on their bikes. Some of them had shiny, brand-new bikes with baskets in the front, while others had old ones that had been passed down through families. The boy often imagined what it would be like to ride with them, to feel the thrill of the wind on his face, to race down the sidewalk without a care in the world. He dreamed of the day he and his sister could ride together, racing each other to the end of the street, laughing as they went. But for now, that day seemed impossible. It was just a dream, a distant hope that felt like it might never come true. His sister, always the practical one, had noticed his longing. She would often sit beside him on the steps, sharing his gaze into the distance, though her thoughts seemed to be more grounded in reality. "Maybe one day," she would say, her voice soft but hopeful. She had a way of making even the impossible seem possible. But deep down the boy could sense that even she wasn't sure if that day would ever come. One afternoon, as the sun began to set and the sky turned a soft shade of pink, the boy and his sister found themselves sitting on the porch steps once again. They had just finished a simple dinner of beans and rice, and the air was cool enough to make them shiver slightly as they sat in the fading light. "Do you think we'll ever get a bike?" the boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His sister, who had been watching the clouds drift across the sky, turned to look at him. There was a gentle sadness in her eyes, but also a quiet strength. She placed a hand on his shoulder, offering comfort in a way only she could. "Maybe one day," she said, her smile soft but filled with warmth. "Maybe one day someone will help us get one. We just have to believe that it could happen." The boy wanted to believe her. He wanted to hold on to that hope. But as the days passed, that dream of riding a bike with his sister seemed to slip further away, buried beneath the weight of their daily struggles. The money never seemed to stretch far enough, and the boy knew deep down that a bike was something that was beyond their reach. And yet, the dream never left him. Every time he saw a bike ride by, he would feel a pang in his chest, a longing so strong it almost hurt. But he never spoke of it again, not wanting to add to his sister's burdens. She already carried so much on her shoulders, helping their mother with chores and watching over him when their father was away at work. Little did he know, the dream he held so tightly to was about to take a surprising turn, one that would change his life in a way he never expected. The boy continued to sit on the steps of his house every evening, watching the sunset with his sister, who had started to join him more often. They had both learned to find comfort in each other's company, even when the world outside felt uncertain. As the days turned into weeks, the boy began to notice someone new walking past their house. An older man who lived a few streets down would pass by slowly every evening, often carrying a bag of groceries or walking his dog. He had a quiet demeanor, the kind of person who didn't say much but whose presence seemed to speak volumes. At first, the boy didn't pay him much attention. But over time, the old man began to catch his eye. There was something about the way he walked that made him seem different from the other adults in the neighborhood. His gait was slow and deliberate, as though he had seen a lifetime of stories unfold before him. His clothes were simple, but there was an air of dignity about him that the boy couldn't quite place. One evening, As the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of orange and purple, the boy was sitting on the steps as usual, lost in thought. His sister was inside, talking to their mother, leaving him with his thoughts. That was when the old man walked by again. This time, instead of just passing by, the old man stopped and glanced at the boy. He offered a gentle smile, one that seemed to reach his eyes. The boy, startled by the gesture, looked up and returned the smile. The old man's smile was warm, but there was a sadness in his eyes that the boy couldn't understand. "Hello there," the old man said softly, his voice carrying the weight of age and experience. The boy shifted nervously but answered, "Hi." The old man chuckled lightly, his voice sounding like a soft breeze rustling through leaves. "What's on your mind, young man? You look like you're lost in thought." The boy hesitated for a moment, unsure whether he should say anything, but something about the old man's calm presence made him feel comfortable enough to speak. I was thinking about how nice it would be to have a bike," the boy said, his words tumbling out before he could stop them. The old man raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "A bike, you say? What would you do with a bike?" The boy smiled a little, though it was tinged with sadness. "I've always wanted to ride one, you know, with my sister. Just go down the street and feel the wind on our faces, but we can't afford one." The old man nodded slowly as though he understood exactly what the boy meant. "I see. That sounds like a wonderful dream." There was a brief silence as the old man gazed out at the sunset, his expression thoughtful. The boy felt a pang of embarrassment, as if he had said too much. But before he could retreat back into his own thoughts, the old man spoke again. "You know, dreams are powerful things," he said, his voice filled with quiet wisdom. "Sometimes they feel far away, like they're just out of reach. But that doesn't mean they're impossible to catch. You just have to hold on to them, even when it feels like they'll slip away." The boy blinked, taken aback by the old man's words. He had never really thought about dreams in that way before. He had always viewed them as distant, impossible things that only happened to other people. But hearing the old man speak about them like they were within reach made him feel something stir inside him, something like hope. "I guess so," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You just keep believing in your dreams, son. It may take time, but things have a way of working out when you least expect them to." The boy looked at the old man, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through him. There was something about the man's words that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, his dream wasn't as far out of reach as he had once thought. "Thank you," the boy said quietly, his voice full of gratitude. The old man nodded once more, then turned to continue his walk. As he did, he paused for a moment and looked back at the boy. "You take care, son," he said, his voice carrying a kindness that made the boy's heart swell. "And remember, dreams have a funny way of coming true when you least expect it." With that, the old man walked away, his figure slowly fading into the distance. The boy watched him for a moment, his mind swirling with thoughts. The old man's words stayed with him, lingering like the aftertaste of something sweet. As the evening grew darker, the boy returned to his thoughts. For the first time in a long while, the idea of getting a bike didn't seem so impossible. He knew it wouldn't happen overnight, but something in him had shifted. The dream of riding with his sister, of feeling the wind on his face as they raced down the street, didn't feel so distant anymore. Later that night, after his sister had gone to bed, the boy sat at the window staring out at the stars. He didn't know how it would happen, but he felt something deep inside, like a quiet promise that one day, his dream would come true. Little did he know, the old man's words would set something in motion, something that would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The weeks passed quietly, but the boy couldn't forget the old man's words. Every evening, as he sat on the steps watching the sunset, he found himself thinking about the bike again. He thought about the wind, the laughter, and how his sister's face would light up if they could finally ride together. And yet, that same nagging feeling always returned, the feeling that the dream was just too far out of reach. But something inside him had changed. He wasn't as discouraged as before. The old man's words kept playing in his mind. Dreams have a funny way of coming true when you least expect it. He couldn't explain it, but he started to believe in the possibility, even if it was small one evening. As the sun began to set and the sky painted itself in colors of orange and pink, the boy sat outside as usual. His sister was inside doing her homework. The evening air was cool, but the boy didn't mind. His thoughts wandered to the bike again, and for the first time, he decided to do something about it. Earlier that week, he had noticed a small ad posted on the community bulletin board at the local grocery store. It wasn't much, just a handwritten note offering a bike for sale. The price was too high for his family, but something about it made him curious. Perhaps, just maybe, he could find a way to earn enough money to buy it. His heart raced as he considered the possibility. He decided to visit the store the next morning to take a closer look. It wasn't far, and he figured if he asked around, he might find a way to help. His family had little money, but maybe he could find something small he could do to earn a little extra. He was willing to do anything. After all, if he worked hard enough, perhaps that dream was closer than he thought. The next morning, after helping his mother with the chores, the boy set out for the grocery store. He walked slowly, savoring the warm, sunny day. It wasn't a long walk, but it gave him time to think. As he passed familiar houses, he saw people going about their daily routines. It was the same routine he had grown accustomed to, but today felt different. There was something stirring inside him, something that made him feel hopeful. When he arrived at the grocery store, he immediately walked over to the bulletin board. He scanned the notices until he found the small ad he had seen the week before. The bike was there, described simply as used but in good condition. The price was still the same, too much for him to afford on his own. But the boy wasn't ready to give up just yet. Just as he was about to walk away, an older woman appeared beside him. She was a regular at the store, someone he had seen many times but had never spoken to before. She was holding a bag of groceries, and her friendly face looked as though she had something to say. "You looking at that bike?" she asked, her voice kind and curious. The boy nodded, feeling a little nervous. "Yeah, I was thinking about it. But it's too expensive." The woman smiled warmly, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "I know the guy who's selling it. He's an older man who lives a few blocks away. He's always been very fair with his prices. If you're interested, you should go talk to him. You never know. He might be willing to work something out with you." The boy's heart skipped a beat. "Really?" She nodded. "You won't know unless you ask. Sometimes people are willing to help if they see you're really trying." The boy thanked her and made a mental note of the man's address. As he walked home that day, the idea that the bike could actually be within his reach filled him with excitement. He didn't know what he would say or how he could possibly afford it, but the possibility of getting the bike now seemed so much closer. That evening he shared his plan with his sister. She listened quietly, her face thoughtful. "You really think you can buy it?" she asked. The boy nodded. "I'm going to try. I'll do whatever I can. Maybe if I ask the man, he'll give me a chance." His sister smiled at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "Well, if anyone can make it happen, it's you. Just don't forget, we're a team. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." The next morning, after finishing the chores at home, the boy made his way to the man's house. It wasn't far, and he walked with purpose, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached the door, he hesitated for just a moment before knocking. The old man answered, his face lined with years of experience but still holding a quiet, welcoming kindness. "Hello, son," the man said. "What can I do for you?" The boy took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I saw your ad about the bike," he said, his voice a little shaky but filled with determination. "I really want to buy it. I don't have enough money, but I was wondering if there's something I could do to earn it. Maybe help around your house or something." The old man looked at him for a moment, studying his face as though weighing his sincerity. Finally, he spoke. "I've been around long enough to know when someone's serious," he said. "Tell you what, if you're willing to work for it, I'll give you a chance." The boy's eyes lit up. "You mean I can earn the bike?" The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I'm not just going to give it to you, but if you're willing to put in the effort, we can work something out." "How does that sound?" The boy didn't even hesitate. "Yes, sir. I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, the boy worked hard for the bike. He helped the old man with his garden, carried bags of groceries, and even helped him fix small things around his house. The boy's determination and work ethic impressed the old man, and little by little, he saw the boy's dream of having a bike come closer to reality. With every day that passed, the boy felt more and more excited. He was closer than ever to reaching the goal he had set for himself. And he knew that it was only a matter of time before he would be able to ride that bike with his sister. One afternoon, after another long day of work, The old man called the boy over. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the world. It felt like the perfect moment. "You've worked hard, son," the old man said, handing him the keys to the bike. "I think it's time." The boy's heart raced as he looked down at the shiny bike, now his. It wasn't just a bike. It was a symbol of everything he had worked for, everything he had hoped for. The day the boy finally got the bike was nothing short of magical. It felt as though the entire world had shifted, aligning perfectly to make this moment happen. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting its final golden hues over the street, the boy stood there, eyes wide in disbelief, staring at the bike that was now his. It was nothing like the shiny, brand-new bikes the other kids rode. It had a few scratches and the paint wasn't perfect, but to him it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It was the bike he had dreamed about for so long, the one he had worked so hard to earn. He could already imagine the wind on his face as he rode alongside his sister, racing toward the horizon. The old man watched the boy, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You've earned it, son," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You've worked harder than most kids I know. Now it's yours." The boy's hands trembled as he reached for the handlebars. It was surreal, the feeling of finally touching something he had only imagined for so long. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of gratitude, though he didn't know how to express the depth of his feelings. The old man patted him on the back. "You're welcome, but remember, this bike is more than just a way to get around. It's a symbol of your perseverance, of your ability to work for what you want. Don't ever forget that." The boy nodded, his heart swelling with emotion. "I won't forget," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As the old man stepped back, giving him space, the boy looked over at his house. His sister was inside, probably finishing her homework. He couldn't wait to show her what he had accomplished, what they could finally do together. Without another word, he climbed onto the bike, his legs shaky at first, unfamiliar with the new motion. But as soon as his feet hit the pedals and he began to move, something clicked inside him. He felt the wind against his skin, the cool air lifting his spirits. He pedaled slowly at first, unsure of how fast he could go, but with each turn of the pedal he gained more confidence. The bike responded to him in ways he couldn't have imagined. It was more than just an object, it was the key to a freedom he had only dreamed of. The streets that had once seemed so limiting now opened up in front of him, stretching toward endless possibilities. As he rode, he thought about the journey it had taken to get here. He had worked for this moment, fought for it, and never given up. The bike wasn't just a material possession. It was a reminder of what could happen when you refused to stop dreaming, when you refused to let life's challenges keep you from reaching for what you wanted. After a few minutes of riding, the boy turned the corner and made his way down the street toward his house. He could already see his sister standing on the porch, watching him with a curious expression. When she saw the bike, her face lit up with surprise and delight. "You did it," she exclaimed, running down the steps to meet him. "You really got the bike." The boy grinned, feeling a warmth spread through him. He had dreamed of this moment for so long, and now it was real. He slowed down as he approached his sister, and with a wide smile he offered her the front seat. "Come on, let's ride together," he said. His sister's eyes sparkled. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice full of excitement. "We're really going to ride?" He nodded. "We're really going to ride." She climbed onto the back of the bike, holding on to him as they began to move again. The first few moments were a little wobbly, but soon they found their rhythm. The boy pedaled harder and his sister laughed, her voice ringing out in the quiet evening air. The sound of her laughter, mixed with the rush of the wind, filled him with a sense of joy that he hadn't known was possible. The two of them rode side by side, following the winding path down the street, their destination unknown but their spirits high. They passed familiar houses, waving at neighbors who smiled and waved back. For the first time, the boy didn't feel like he was just watching life go by. He was part of it now, moving through it with the wind in his hair and the promise of more adventures ahead. They rode past the old oak tree at the end of the block, the one they had passed by so many times but never thought much about. Now as they glided past it, it felt like a symbol of everything they had overcome. They had faced their own challenges, their own doubts, and yet here they were, riding together at sunset, as free as the birds in the sky. As the sky darkened and the streetlights flickered on, the boy felt a sense of peace settle over him. They rode for hours, just the two of them, laughing and talking, sharing stories and dreams. The world felt bigger now, full of endless possibilities. Eventually, the boy slowed the bike and came to a stop in front of their house. He helped his sister off, both of them smiling from ear to ear. They stood there for a moment, catching their breath, letting the quiet evening settle around them. "This is the best thing ever," his sister said, her voice filled with awe. The boy nodded, feeling the same way. It was more than just a bike ride. It was a celebration of everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed about. It was the moment when a dream finally came true. That night, after putting the bike away and saying goodnight to his sister, the boy sat alone in his room, reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the old man who had believed in him, the one who had helped him make his dream a reality. He thought about his sister who had always supported him no matter what. And he thought about the journey, the work, the sweat, the sacrifices that had brought him here. It wasn't just about the bike. It was about the power of perseverance, of never giving up on what mattered most. It was about the belief that dreams could come true, even when the world seemed to say otherwise. As he lay down to sleep that night, a sense of contentment washed over him. The bike wasn't just a way to get from one place to another. It was a reminder that anything was possible when you put your heart into it. He had worked for this, and now he was living it. And as he drifted off to sleep, he dreamed of more rides, more sunsets, and more adventures to come. The journey wasn't over. It had just begun. As the days turned into weeks, the boy and his sister continued to ride the bike together. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky filled with shades of pink and orange, they would pedal down the street, laughing and talking. Their world had grown bigger with the addition of the bike, a symbol of their dreams finally realized. The boy couldn't help but feel a sense of pride every time he saw the bike leaning against the house. It wasn't just any bike. It was their bike, the one that had brought them closer together and given them the freedom they had always wanted. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that made all the difference. One evening, as they rode along the familiar path, the boy felt a shift in the air. Something had changed and he couldn't quite place it. It wasn't a bad feeling, but it was different. He glanced at his sister, who seemed to be lost in thought. Her eyes were focused ahead, but there was something in the way she was pedaling that made him wonder if she was thinking about something more than just the ride. "Hey," he called out, slowing down to match her pace. "What's going on?" "You've been quiet." She looked over at him, a small smile on her lips. "I'm fine," she said softly, though her voice didn't carry the usual excitement it usually had when they rode together. "Just thinking." "About what?" the boy asked, curiosity creeping into his voice. She hesitated for a moment, glancing at him. "I was thinking about how things have changed. I mean, we used to just dream about this, right? Now it's real," the boy nodded. He had thought about that too, especially on the long rides when everything felt perfect. "Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe we finally have this." She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "It's just, I don't know. I guess I didn't expect things to feel so different now." The boy didn't quite understand what she meant, but he could see that something was bothering her. "What do you mean?" "We've got everything we ever wanted." She slowed her pedaling, bringing the bike to a stop. The boy followed suit, both of them standing still under the fading light of the sunset. She looked down at the ground for a moment, as though gathering her thoughts before speaking. "It's just, I don't want things to change too much, you know," she said, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "We've always had to make do with what we had. It felt simpler that way. But now with this bike, everything feels different. I don't know if I'm ready for it." The boy's heart sank. He had never imagined that his sister might feel uncertain about the changes in their life. "What do you mean?" "We've worked for this. You've worked for this. Don't you want to ride and have fun?" She nodded slowly. "Of course I do. But it's more than that. It's like we're leaving behind the life we knew, the way things used to be, and I'm not sure I'm ready to move on from that." The boy didn't know how to respond. He had been so caught up in the joy of their new freedom that he hadn't thought about how it might feel for his sister. To her, the bike wasn't just a dream come true. It was a symbol of everything that had changed, everything they had left behind. "I guess I never thought about it that way," he said, his voice soft. "But I don't think we're leaving anything behind. We're just moving forward, you know? We've still got each other, and that's what matters." His sister looked up at him, her eyes filled with both uncertainty and gratitude. "You're right. I guess I'm just afraid of what's next. We've always had to fight for everything we've gotten, and now, I don't know. It's scary." The boy reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. We've always had each other, and we always will." She smiled then, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "You always know how to make me feel better." The boy grinned. "That's what I'm here for." As the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, they both climbed back onto the bike. This time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. They rode together in the quiet of the evening, the sound of the tires against the road filling the air as they moved forward. The world was still big, but it didn't seem as daunting as it had before. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The next few days passed by in a blur of bike rides, laughter, and quiet moments. But as the boy and his sister settled into their new routine, something else was quietly unfolding in the background, a change that neither of them had expected. One afternoon, as the boy was finishing up some chores at home, he noticed the old man walking by his house again. This time, though, he wasn't alone. He was walking alongside a woman, someone the boy hadn't seen before. She had an air of grace about her, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and a smile that radiated warmth. The boy waved to the old man, who smiled and waved back. The woman glanced over at him and raised an eyebrow, as though she was curious about the boy. He walked over to the sidewalk, wanting to say hello. "Hey, Mr. Thompson," the boy called out, using the name he had learned from the old man. The old man stopped and turned toward him, a smile lighting up his face. "Well, if it isn't my favorite young rider," he said, his voice warm and friendly. "How's the bike treating you?" "It's great," the boy replied eagerly. "We ride every day. It's like a dream." The old man chuckled, looking pleased. "I'm glad to hear that. This is my niece, Margaret," he said, gesturing toward the woman beside him. "She's visiting for a while." The boy smiled shyly and waved at Margaret. "Hi," he said. Margaret returned the wave with a smile. "Hi there. I've heard a lot about you from my uncle. He speaks very highly of you." The boy felt a little embarrassed but couldn't help feeling proud at the same time. "Thanks. I'm just trying to make the most of everything." "Well, you're doing a great job," Margaret said, her voice kind. "I can see that you've got a good heart." The boy smiled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. But just as the conversation began to wind down, the old man spoke again, his tone thoughtful. "You know, son," he said, "life has a way of surprising us. Just when we think we've reached the end of one journey, we find ourselves starting another. It's all part of growing, part of moving forward." The boy nodded, though he didn't entirely understand what the old man meant, but he felt the weight of the words, as if they carried more meaning than he could fully grasp. The old man's words, much like the bike, were a reminder that life was always changing, always evolving. As Margaret and the old man walked away, the boy stood there for a moment, reflecting on their conversation. His sister had been right to feel uncertain about the changes. Life was always in motion, always shifting, but the one thing he knew for sure was that he wasn't alone in this journey. He had his sister, the old man, and the bike, a symbol of everything they had overcome and everything that was still to come. And for the first time, he felt ready for whatever the future held. As the seasons changed, so did the boy and his sister's connection to the bike. What had started as a dream, then a long-anticipated reality, had slowly become part of their everyday lives. The simple pleasure of riding together at sunset, with the wind in their faces and laughter in the air, had turned into something deeper, something that reminded them every day of their strength, their perseverance, and the unspoken bond they shared. But with the passage of time, life started to feel a little more complicated again. The boy's family, like many others in their neighborhood, continued to struggle. There were more days than not when the money didn't stretch far enough to cover everything, when meals were simpler, and the sense of uncertainty crept in again. The bike, though still a source of pride and joy, had started to feel like a symbol of the very things they were trying to protect: the dreams, the hope, the desire to keep moving forward despite the odds. And sometimes when the boy looked at it, he couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to stop pedaling and let life take him wherever it wanted. One evening, after a long day of helping his mother around the house, the boy sat on the front steps watching the sun slowly dip behind the horizon. He could feel the weight of the day in his bones. the tiredness that had crept in from the work and the worries. His sister was inside as usual doing her homework or helping their mother, but he needed a moment to himself. The bike was leaning against the house nearby, its once shiny frame now showing signs of wear from all the rides and adventures. The old man had once told him that dreams had a way of coming true when you least expected it, but sometimes when the weight of reality seemed too much, even the most beautiful dreams could feel distant. He thought about what he had been through to get to this point. The long hours of work, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt that had threatened to stop him from moving forward. It was hard to keep believing when the world around you felt so heavy. Just then, the familiar sound of footsteps on the gravel driveway caught his attention. He turned to see his sister walking toward him, her face tired but still filled with that ever-present warmth. "You okay?" she asked, noticing his distant gaze. He smiled softly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, just thinking." "About the bike?" she asked, sitting down beside him on the steps. He nodded. "I don't know. Sometimes it feels like everything's changing, and I don't know if I'm ready for it." She looked at him with understanding, her brow furrowing slightly. "I get that. Things feel different now, don't they? We've got this bike, but we still have all the other stuff to deal with. The bills, the worries, the things we can't control. It's hard." The boy didn't know what to say. His sister had always been the practical one, the one who kept their feet on the ground while he dreamed big. But even she seemed to be feeling the weight of things now. "You've always been the one to keep us going," she said quietly. "I don't want you to feel like you have to carry everything alone. We're in this together, okay?" His heart ached a little at her words. He had always tried to shield her from the burdens of life, but it was clear now that she was carrying her own share of worries too. They were both growing up, each in their own way, and life wasn't always as simple as it had once seemed. "We'll figure it out," he said softly, more to reassure himself than anything. "We always do," she smiled, her eyes brightening. "That's right. We've been through worse, haven't we?" "Yeah," he said, the weight in his chest lightening just a little. "We've made it this far. We can keep going." The two of them sat in silence for a moment, the sun sinking lower and lower in the sky. There was something comforting about the quiet between them, something that reminded him that even in the toughest of times, they weren't alone. As the days continued to pass, the boy and his sister found themselves spending more and more time together, riding the bike through the neighborhood, sharing stories and dreams. It was still their escape, still the one place where they could feel free. And yet, as much as they loved those rides, the realities of life began to catch up with them in ways they hadn't expected. One afternoon, as they were riding down the familiar path toward the old oak tree, the boy noticed a group of kids from the neighborhood up ahead. They were gathered around a new bike, a bright, shiny one that looked like it had just come off the showroom floor. The boy felt a twinge of envy, but he quickly pushed it aside. He had his bike, and that was more than enough. Still, the thought lingered as they passed by. "Hey, nice bike," one of the kids called out, noticing them as they rode past. "Where'd you get that?" The boy smiled politely, but the question stung more than he had expected. "It's used," he said, keeping his voice steady. "But it works just fine." The kid nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer, and went back to admiring the new bike. The boy felt his sister's eyes on him, but he didn't say anything. It wasn't the first time they had encountered people who had more than they did. It wasn't the first time they had been reminded of how much they didn't have. As they rode home that evening, the boy found himself thinking about what the kid had said. It wasn't the bike that bothered him. It was the way it made him feel. He had worked so hard for what he had, but sometimes the world seemed to make him feel like it wasn't enough. Back at home, as the boy and his sister put the bike away for the night, he noticed the old man walking by again. This time he wasn't alone. He was with Margaret, his niece, and they were heading toward the local park. The boy waved, and the old man waved back with a smile. As he got closer, he called out to the boy. "You look like you've got something on your mind," the old man said, his voice warm and knowing. The boy hesitated, unsure if he should say anything, but something about the old man's presence made him feel like he could speak freely. "It's just, I don't know," the boy began, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard we try, it's never enough. We've got the bike, but we still have to deal with everything else. And I see people with new bikes, and it just makes me wonder if we'll ever get ahead." The old man nodded, his expression thoughtful. I understand, he said after a moment. It's easy to get caught up in the things we don't have. But you've got something more valuable than any bike or any possession. You've got your sister, your family, your strength. Those things matter more than anything. The boy looked at the old man, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. But what if it's still not enough? What if we never get ahead? The old man smiled gently. You don't need to get ahead. You just need to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The bike, the money, all those things, they'll come and go. But the important things? The love, the hard work, the dreams you hold on to, they'll stay with you. The boy nodded slowly, taking in the old man's words. For the first time in a while, he felt a sense of clarity. It wasn't about keeping up with others or trying to be perfect. It was about doing his best, loving the people around him and never giving up on what mattered. I get it, the boy said quietly. Thank you. The old man smiled and patted him on the shoulder. You're welcome, son. Keep going. You're doing just fine. As the boy watched the old man and Margaret walk away, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The bike was still theirs, and it was still a symbol of everything they had fought for. But it wasn't the bike that mattered most. It was the journey they were on, the love they shared, and the strength that came from holding on to their dreams. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet, steady rhythm. The boy and his sister spent their days much like before, helping out around the house, doing their best to stay afloat amidst the struggles of everyday life. The bike remained a constant in their world, a reminder of the dream they had worked so hard to bring to life. But it wasn't just the bike that had changed things. It was everything that came with it. The boy had learned to appreciate the simple moments, the ones that came without the need for anything extra. One evening, as they sat on the front porch watching the sky turn to dusk, the boy couldn't help but notice how the world seemed to slow down. There was something about the way the evening air felt that made everything feel right. The soft rustling of the leaves in the trees, the distant sound of a dog barking, and the quiet hum of life going on all around them. It all blended together into a peaceful harmony. His sister sat beside him, her eyes focused on the horizon. He could tell she was deep in thought, her mind likely occupied with the same worries that had weighed on both of them for so long. He didn't have to ask to know that she was still processing everything just as he was. You know, she said after a long silence, her voice soft. I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about how we just need to keep going no matter what. The boy turned to look at her, surprised. He hadn't realized that his words had stayed with her. Yeah? He asked, his voice filled with curiosity. She nodded slowly. I think you're right. We don't need to get ahead. We just need to keep moving forward, even if it's just a little bit at a time. The boy smiled, feeling a wave of pride wash over him. His sister had always been the one to keep them grounded. But now it seemed like she was starting to see things his way. Exactly. It's not about rushing to the end. It's about enjoying the journey. For a moment they sat in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. The evening air grew cooler, but neither of them seemed to mind. There was a sense of peace in the quiet, a reminder that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The bike had become more than just a mode of transportation. It had become a symbol of their shared journey. They had both worked hard to get where they were, and even though life wasn't always easy, they had learned to appreciate the small victories, the moments of joy, and the strength they had built together. As the days passed, the boy continued to ride the bike with his sister, just as they had done before, but now there was a new sense of purpose behind their rides. It wasn't just about escaping or finding freedom. It was about moving forward step by step and finding peace in the process. Every turn of the pedals, every laugh shared along the way, was a reminder that they were on this journey together. One afternoon, as they rode through the neighborhood, the boy noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. At the end of the street, just before the park, a sign had been posted on a nearby tree. It was an announcement for a local race, one that promised a prize for the fastest rider. The boy's heart skipped a beat as he read the details. The thought of competing, of testing his abilities against others, was both exciting and daunting. He wasn't sure why it caught his attention. He had never been one for competition, but something about the idea of the race stirred something inside him. Maybe it was the challenge. Maybe it was the chance to prove to himself that he could push further, go faster, achieve more than he had thought possible. He glanced at his sister, who had noticed the sign too. Do you think we should do it? He asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. His sister raised an eyebrow, her gaze shifting from the sign to the boy. You mean enter the race? She asked, sounding surprised. I don't know. We've never really done something like that before. The boy felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I mean, why not? We've come so far already, right? Maybe it's time to try something new. His sister hesitated for a moment, clearly deep in thought. I don't know. It's a little intimidating, don't you think? Competing against other riders. What if we don't win? The boy smiled, feeling more certain now. It's not about winning. It's about pushing ourselves, about showing up and giving it our all. Even if we don't win, we'll know we tried our best. And that's enough. She looked at him, her expression softening. You really think we can do it? He nodded. I know we can. The decision was made. The boy and his sister signed up for the race, both excited and nervous about the challenge ahead. In the days that followed, they trained together, pushing each other to go faster, to ride longer, to give it their all. The bike, once just a way to pass the time, had become a tool for something greater. It was a way to prove to themselves that they were capable of more than they had ever imagined. Race day arrived, and the neighborhood was buzzing with energy. People gathered at the starting line, their bikes lined up in neat rows. The boy and his sister stood near the back, unsure of what to expect but ready for the challenge. Their bike wasn't the newest, the fastest, or the most expensive, but it was theirs, and that made all the difference. As they lined up at the start, the boy couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just about winning. It was about taking that first step toward something bigger, something that would take them farther than they had ever gone before. The race began, and the boy and his sister took off, their legs pumping hard as they pushed forward. The crowd cheered as the riders sped down the course, but the boy's focus was entirely on the road ahead. He wasn't concerned with who was behind him or ahead of him. He was only concerned with keeping pace, pushing himself further, and doing his best. The race wasn't easy. There were moments when his legs burned with exhaustion, when the road seemed endless, and when the thought of giving up crossed his mind. But then he remembered what the old man had said. Keep going. One step at a time. His sister was right beside him, her face focused but determined. Together they rode, pushing through the discomfort and the doubt. The finish line loomed ahead, and though they were far from the front, the boy felt a sense of accomplishment that couldn't be measured by placement. As they crossed the finish line, breathless and tired but filled with a sense of triumph, the boy looked at his sister. She was smiling, her cheeks flushed with excitement. They hadn't won the race, but it didn't matter. They had shown up, they had given it their all, and they had crossed the finish line together. That was amazing, his sister said, still grinning. The boy laughed, feeling a deep sense of pride. Yeah, it really was. They didn't win the race, but they had won something far more important. The knowledge that they could face challenges head-on and keep moving forward, no matter how difficult the road might be. As they walked their bike back home, the sun setting behind them, the boy realized something. The race had never been about the finish line. It had always been about the journey, the steps they took together, and the strength they found in each other. They didn't need to be the fastest or the best. All they needed was each other, the bike, and the belief that no matter what came next, they could handle it. Together,